It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I have the pleasure today of speaking with Greg Shipley. He's the spokesperson for the Maryland State Police. Greg, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Donna.
So the reason for me reaching out to you started long before this, but for me, my exasperation came a week ago when I drove from Annapolis to Harford County to Conowingo Dam and back. I don't know what's going on. I don't think I'm an old lady driver, but apparently I have become an old lady driver because even doing slightly over the speed limit, and I had people tailgating me so aggressively and speeding so fast, zooming in and out of lanes. It is all out crazy on the Maryland highways currently, and I think that it has gotten worse since the pandemic has started. Do your facts and figures go along with that, and why is this happening?
Well, certainly anecdotally, Donna, that has the driving behavior has changed out there, at least with incidents that shock the average driver like you driving that distance. You're seeing individual vehicles driving in ways and at rates that we hadn't seen for some time. And I'll give you a great example that happened just today. Our Field Operations Bureau Chief, Lieutenant Colonel Roland Butler, was driving to headquarters on the Beltway. He saw in his rearview mirror a vehicle that was approaching him at a high rate of speed. The vehicle got right behind him and then passed him. He had sped up as he saw that vehicle approaching him. He had sped up to 80 miles an hour to try to get a pace on this vehicle. The vehicle blew by him. He was able to get a quick pace of about 100 miles an hour on that vehicle. He stopped the vehicle, and this was at 9 o'clock this morning. He stops the vehicle on the inner loop of the Beltway and issues this driver several citations. But this is someone driving on the Baltimore Beltway over 100 miles an hour at 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't have the science to back this up, but I do have a lot of anecdotal information that has come from our troopers and from concerned people like you that we believe this current driving behavior began when the traffic volume was greatly reduced during the early months of the pandemic. People were staying home. There was no longer a traffic congestion in the mornings and in the evenings during rush hour, and the highways were wide open. And so drivers seemed to make the decision that they could drive any way they wanted, and we were seeing that behavior really all across the state, but in particular areas such as the Capitol Beltway, the Baltimore Beltway, and on the interstates. And in late April, early May, we responded very strongly to that across the state with specific initiatives aimed at traffic and speed enforcement especially, but also aggressive driver enforcement. And those efforts are continuing, and I can talk about specific ones in a minute. But I think what we continue to see a hangover from what started back in the spring. And there are individual drivers who must believe that the reduced traffic volume makes it okay for them to drive any way they want, and that police aren't out there conducting enforcement. But I will be quick to say that that is not true, and that we are conducting enforcement and will continue to. And as we move on here today, I have specific evidence of that right in Anne Arundel County, where our barracks are writing more citations and warnings so far this year than they have in the previous year. So we are making traffic stops. We are doing that. But drivers like you are seeing these individual situations that are frightening to them, and rightfully so.
The rule used to be you move over to the right if you're going to be a slow driver, which I did. I'm not even a slow driver. I'm staying the speed limit or 5 miles over, going 70 miles an hour in a 65. And I had trucks barreling down on me. So it's not just cars. And this is something that also I never saw before, 18-wheelers tailgating.
It's unfortunate, and commercial drivers have been a part of that. That's one of those areas that we focused on back in the spring, especially on the Capitol Beltway. We're having a number of commercial vehicle crashes on the Capitol Beltway in a certain stretch in Montgomery County where there were some significant curves on I-495 there. And, our commanders were finding, as well as officials at the MDOT State Highway Administration, was that these commercial drivers had been driving through these areas before, but never had they had the open road like they had now. And so they were speeding through these areas, and they were hitting these curves, especially on rainy days, and they were losing control of their commercial vehicles. A number of those crashes involved overturned tractor trailers, and so we focused on that in a number of ways, both through enforcement, but also in contacting the commercial vehicle, the trucking associations. We put messages on an app that the commercial vehicle drivers use, warning them of the need to slow down. But that was a significant issue, again, back in the spring that we addressed on the Capitol Beltway, and it involved commercial vehicles. So, right, drivers of all kinds of vehicles are taking advantage of what they feel is a situation where they can drive any way they want, and that's not the case. And we're working to correct that.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Greg Shipley, spokesperson for the Maryland State Police. We're talking about the craziness on Maryland state highways currently, all the roads, because I don't know, is it a term? Is it COVID driving? Have you all named this yet?
No, we haven't named it, and we're not, we're not sociologists, and so we can't attribute it all to that. Again, that's been anecdotal because we have seen lower traffic volumes, and again, we believe that the lower traffic volumes have contributed to the desire by individuals to drive in violation of Maryland's traffic laws, and certainly traffic laws have not changed as a result of the pandemic. We've been rather dramatic here at the beginning, but let me give you some information that I hope will encourage you, because especially, and I'll focus on Anne Arundel County, where much of your audience is from. We have two state police barracks in Anne Arundel County, the Glen Burnie Barrack, which patrols the northern part of the county, and the Annapolis Barrack, of course, in the southern part of the county. But for instance, in the Annapolis Barrack, the crashes we've responded to in 2020, they've responded to 316 crashes, reportable crashes in 2020, compared with 438 in the same time in 2019. So their number of crashes has dropped significantly, as has the Glen Burnie Barrack. Glen Burnie, so far this year, has responded to 1,039 total crashes, and that's compared to 1,479 for the same period last year. So our crashes that we're responding to have dropped significantly, and our enforcement, we believe, is picking up and is more significant than we've had in years past. The Annapolis Barrack troopers have worked 92 traffic-related enforcement initiatives so far this year, 92 specific initiatives, and this is in addition to troopers out there on patrol doing their normal duties of enforcing traffic laws. These are specific organized functions of groups of troopers who are assigned to a specific area, such as Route 50 or Route 97 or Route 32, in areas that they are assigned to patrol, that focus on driving behaviors, speeding, aggressive driving, move over law violations, distracted driving. And the way we do this, Donna, is through data-driven enforcement. And our commanders are looking at data on a regular basis. Where are the crashes occurring? Where are the DUI arrests occurring? Where are those DUI-related crashes occurring? And they're assigning the troopers and these specific enforcement initiatives into those areas. Many of these initiatives take place during the day, during the rush hour times of day, because that's where the traffic crashes are occurring. That's where these are happening. And so this is occurring at barracks all across our state. And Colonel Jones, our superintendent, has regular meetings with the barrack commanders, the troop commanders in these areas, and holds them accountable for where are your crashes occurring and what are you doing to address those crashes. What are we seeing, and what's your enforcement?
While the crashes have been less, because of the high rate of speed, have they been more severe?
Well, the fatalities are down that we have handled. And again, let me also say that these are all preliminary figures, and these are just Maryland State Police figures. I'm not speaking for any other police department. I'm speaking for ours. And And so far in 2020, we have handled 148 fatal crashes across the state, and that's compared with 172 at this same time last year. And so, again, the number of fatal crashes that we have handled are down by about 13%. But I have to say that doesn't mean that it couldn't go higher by the end of the year, because we did have that reduced traffic volume for this several-month period during the early months of the pandemic, but our fatalities are down that we've responded to. And so we're encouraged by that. However, as anyone who had basic physics knows, the faster you go, the harder you will hit. And traffic safety experts will tell you very quickly that when you hit something at 80 miles an hour, your chances of injuries and death are exponentially increased based on, driving the speed limit for a particular area. And so those dangers are out there, and the faster you're driving, the greater your risk of injury and death, or injuring and killing someone else.
I normally will take the back way, as they say, from Annapolis to New York. I'll go 301 because it's a lower speed limit. It's less cars. It's less stress driving, as far as I'm concerned, than getting out on the 95 going through Harford County. However, this weekend, not going to New York, but even 301 has changed now. And yes, you do have a barrack in Centerville, and yes, there were some police out there, state police, but 90 miles an hour, and this is several cars, and I have a feeling that people feel like that the other cars are doing this. I have to keep up the speed limit to keep up with the traffic.
Well, there is certainly that thought, and that forces other drivers to drive in ways that they would not want to drive normally, because they feel pressured into doing that, and that is unfortunate, and certainly a logical phenomenon that we're seeing. But I would encourage people to do what you're doing, and that's, do your best to take alternate routes. But again, Donna, much of this comes down to individual responsibility, and drivers the bottom line is they need to obey the traffic laws that are out there. As I've said, those have not changed. Our troopers, and I know allied law enforcement agencies, are working. We are not oblivious to this issue, and they have increased their enforcement. They are paying attention to this, and they're working in these areas where these complaints and these crashes are occurring.
Let's take another quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, talking today with Greg Shipley, spokesperson for the Maryland State Police. We're talking about speeding on our Maryland roads. This is the first time I've talked to you since H2OI in Ocean City. Mm-hmm. It seems like the enforcement there was not well received by those driving the cars that were creating problems in the past, yeah?
Well, that's too bad. We don't apologize for that. When someone feels that they can do a burnout on the Bay Bridge, there's a lot wrong with that. And I know we worked in great cooperation and support of the Ocean City Police Department, the Maryland Transportation Authority Police, and a number of other police agencies who are part of that effort, both in Ocean City and on Route 50, everywhere from the Bay Bridge down to Ocean City. We had a trooper that was injured during that response down there in Ocean City. It could have turned out to be a very tragic situation.
He was knocked down, correct?
He was knocked down. He actually, the suspect who was fleeing an arrest by the Ocean City Police, our trooper pursued him. They fell down, and the suspect fell on top of our trooper. When other troopers reached him, he was actually not breathing and unconscious. And the significantly unfortunate thing here is that troopers had to put him in a car and get him away from the scene so they could just get him to an ambulance. This scene was so out of control.
Is he okay now?
He is. It's amazing. Thank God he was not seriously injured, but initially it looked like it could have been very serious, and certainly it could have been had things been a little bit different. And there's just no reason for this. There's no excuse for this, and there was a lot of expense incurred by police departments in dealing with that situation. There was a lot of risk to other motorists on the highway, and there's just no excuse for it. But we did react strongly to that. We had troopers from all over the state police assigned to that detail who were there and working in support of the Ocean City Police Department. But again, right now we have troopers from the Washington Metro Troop working around the Capitol Beltway and in Montgomery County especially, where we've had multiple issues of street racing going on down there. Just this weekend, our Rockville Barrack was involved in the 5th operation in recent weeks down there to deal with street racing. We are doing our best to address these challenges and learn about where the issues are and to take appropriate action. But that's what our troopers are doing on a weekly basis out there.
And when these street racing events happen, and they've happened in Anne Arundel, we've seen them shut down Route 50 on a weekend evening, or H2OI in Ocean City, or as you're saying now in Montgomery County.
Right.
Do you think you're going to end it?
Well, it's interesting. We certainly hope so, but again, it may pop up somewhere else. But just this weekend, they had no one show up for this event. So because we had announced that we were doing enforcement, we were there in that area, and it moved to a private location somewhere. So again, we will respond as best we can and work with county and municipal law enforcement to deal with these issues as they arise. But fortunately this weekend we did see a positive result in that it was not an issue on the streets.
Your intel people must be on Snapchat. That's a good thing.
A lot of that has changed, and we are doing our best to keep up with the times, and again use every public means possible to be there and be prepared. But again, much of this has to do with personal responsibility, and if people make the decision to violate the law, we will do everything we can to be there to take the appropriate action. And we still encourage other motorists to call police when they witness dangerous driving out there. If you're on an interstate in Maryland, you can dial pound 77. You'll be connected to the nearest state police barracks. And we will do our best. If you have a good description of that vehicle and a direction of travel, we'll do our best to intercept it and take the appropriate law enforcement action. And we are successful with that from time to time.
So no matter what, I'm witnessing as I'm driving to Hartford County or Centerville, Maryland, or wherever, I'm witnessing somebody going at a high rate of speed, weaving in and out of lanes. I'm going to call pound 77, and if your people are available, you will respond. That's what you're saying?
We will do our best, yes. If you can give us a description, direction of travel, the interstate, we will do our best to be in that area, and that's going to help us. Obviously, there are a lot more safe drivers out there moving up and down the highway. Their eyes are, you can be our eyes and help with that situation and give us that information that we need, and we'll do our best to respond.
So until the situation changes, and I know you're working hard diligently to get it to change, how should people stay safe when driving on 95 North, on 301, wherever they are? How should people stay safe? Stay to the right? I mean, what's the best? What are your tips?
Well, certainly the old adage of driving defensively. You need to. Traffic safety is your number one priority whenever you're behind the wheel. That means you're eliminating the distractions that you have in your vehicle. You are making sure that you're buckled up and everybody in your car is buckled up, and that you are driving within the traffic laws, the speed limit. You're paying attention to your driving, and then your head needs to be on that swivel where you're checking your mirrors, you're looking for vehicles running up behind you, you're staying in a lane where you feel it's the safest to travel, and you're letting those vehicles that are violating the laws move around you and move on down the road. You're not engaging in any kind of road rage situation or anything like that, but you really have to protect yourselves and do your best to look out for your safety, and we'll certainly do what we can to be there and help increase that safety.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.